Okay, good morning, all of you. Good morning, sir. I want to see some smiling faces, not serious faces. Okay, so let's start the session for today. You already had sessions on careers in finance, right? And marketing. Also on HR. And which one? And BA. So you already had 4. So I'm the last person kind of going to talk about this area of supply chain management. But please be open to ask question on any of these areas, where you have got any doubt, and let's kind of clarify. So when we talk about careers for MBA students, obviously, what is the picture that you will have in mind? What kind of picture do you have in mind when you talk about MBA careers? In corporate? What's the best job you can think of? Who can talk about the best job? This is the best job for me. CEO of the company, but obviously that's the best job when you kind of climb the ladder. But today, when you enter, do you have that thinking that what is the best job that I can get? Leave aside the money part. You hear 1 crore offers and all those stuff, but I'm not talking about money. What is the best role that you can think of you can get as an MBA student? Working for upper management. Okay, I'll talk about that. Yes. Travel all the parts of the world. Okay.
So working what we love for.
And what is that?
So in which field you are interested?
Okay. So typically, people want consulting roles. Most of the time I hear, I want to join McKinsey, I want to join BCG, because we think that it's a great, job, and it's obviously an excellent opportunity to work with various corporations, while working through those companies. Some of you, if you're not experienced, and he talked about it, becoming the what we call as executive assistant to the managing director or to the chairman is considered to be a very high value role. So you had Dr. Srini coming and presenting on finance, right? Imagine very early in his career, he got the opportunity to join Ajay Piramal's office, in the chairman's office, and see where he is. So when you watch a chairman working and you are supporting him or her to kind of as part of their life, professional life, you learn a lot. So those are some of the careers that people think about. So if you map your, areas to focus on, typically you will find consulting, supporting management roles kind of as one group. Then you will find finance as a very big group, right? It could be working for investment banks, retail banks, fintechs, investment banks. So banking is a big sector. On the other side, IT is another big one. That provides, so banking and IT typically provide 60, 65, 70% of the jobs in the Indian market. Obviously, IT is very skewed towards engineers, in terms of the technical skill on the engineering side. If you leave aside these 3, then there are special functions where you get opportunity. HR is one where you need to manage people. So therefore, and similarly today what we are going to talk about, the big area which is generally called as operations, people call it manufacturing, somewhere you will hear that as chief operations officer role. We are talking about supply chain management. So that's another big area where, and when I will explain, I can show you in pictorial format that organizations, if you really look at organizations producing some output, this big box where raw materials enter and they get converted into products, and those products reach the customer. This big box is managed by people who are typically in operations. And sometimes it may not sound to be a very glamorous role, because as operations manager, you may be in a plant working very hard with machines and workers and supervisors. Somewhere you may be sitting in a warehouse while you will have a tag of working for Amazon and Flipkart, but actually you will be sitting in a warehouse, which may not be the greatest place that you want to sit actually, surrounded by maybe millions of products. And you are looking at how do I really manage the whole flow of customer requests and service the requests and things like that, right? So this big box is what I'm going to talk about today. And obviously there are other areas as well, where you will have job opportunities. So that's what we will focus on today. Okay, so remember this picture that I showed in the first session during orientation? Anybody remembers? What did we say here? What is one important thing to link with supply chain or operations? Looking at this picture. The manufacturing, very nice. Can we have the mics moving around so we can have people answering? Manufacturing. And what's special about manufacturing? How can you link that with supply chain? Import exports. Excellent. Import exports. Manufacturing. What else did we say? Logistics. So, this is one of the important, and why am I putting this slide once again? Is because this is the area of our economy where games are changing, and therefore the opportunities are changing. If you are speaking to me 5 years, 7 years, 10 years back, the whole focus around getting operations job was like, okay, it's one of the requirement. But if you look at today, the operations job requirement have become very significant, and it is because this needs investment, and investment is coming. It all started with the government investment. That's where you see trend in capital expenditure by the government. And the good news is now the private sector investment is coming, which means that L&T is ready to invest money. You'll hear a lot of companies putting capex to build capacities in chemical plant, in steel plant. Only yesterday JSW Steel has got a very big steel plant investment approved by the board, right? So a lot of private capex is actually coming, and this is where the opportunities in supply chain and operations will increase. Okay, so good news for us. Last few years have been great, and we are now going to build on this run of actually building the supply chain management jobs. Before I go into detail, let me show you this presentation, this slide. What is a business operation?
Think about all the items and services you use on a daily basis, from the clothes you wear and the breakfast cereal you eat, to the car you drive and the phone you use. It's likely these are all products of different organizations. You might not normally think about the processes that produce all these goods and services, but that's what the study of operations is all about. Operations are what companies use to transform resources into goods or services. Most of an organization's financial and human resources are invested in operations. So operations management is critical to any organization's success. The role of operations management is to design, plan, direct, and improve all the activities involved in producing goods or services. Operations managers are required to make decisions in 8 key areas. Some of these are more strategic, whereas others are more tactical. We'll be considering 4 of the more strategic areas. They involve high-level planning decisions about how an organization will get from where it is now to where it wants to be. These areas are strategic operations management, product design, supply chain management, and quality management. The first area, strategic operations management, involves long-term, broad considerations about the viability of a business. How will it create value for customers and gain a competitive advantage? For example, you might need to answer a question like, what are the unique features of our apparel business that make it competitive? Successful strategic operations management aligns an organization's operations to an overall business strategy. A second area is product design. This is where you make decisions about the features of a product or service. What features will make it a success? For example, a decision about which features to include in the next release of a company's cell phone line may greatly impact the success of the phones. A third important area where operations managers make decisions is supply chain management. This involves managing, monitoring, and controlling all activities along the supply chain. It's about deciding how to guarantee the timely, cost-effective acquisition of inputs and delivery of outputs to customers. For example, you might need to decide which suppliers to use and how best to transport goods to retail outlets. A fourth area is quality management. This involves determining how to measure and maintain quality and how to identify and resolve quality problems. For example, you'll need to decide what to test to check the quality of a product or service. On a daily basis, operations managers make decisions that are key to the running of their organizations. Knowing what strategic areas to consider can make you more effective in your role and add to your organization's success.
Okay, you got a feel of operations management. What is it all about? So, while finance will give you money, HR will get you the people, and marketing is going to make sure that the products are bought by our customers. But who will make these products? How will this whole process run of, taking input and then, producing that output so that it's available to go to the, customers? That's what we are going to talk about today. And, think about strategic roles in this. For example, if we start with, somebody said import, export, buying of raw material. Today we are working in a global economy, right? It's no longer what you need in India, you get in India, what you produce in India, you consume in India. That's not the case. You will actually buy raw materials from across the globe. You will have your customers sitting all over the place, Europe, Americas, Africa, all over the place, right? So one of the first things that you can think about, as a MBA student to focus on is, how do I learn about global supply chain in raw materials? Let's say, if let's say mining in India, like coal, if you study coal mining, we don't have enough coal reserves, and even if we have coal reserves, mining is very costly from that perspective. So how do you import coal from Australia, for example? Or how can you go and develop coal mines in, let's say, Zambia, Zimbabwe, one of the African markets where there's a lot of abundance of minerals, but they don't have technology and people to do it? Now, such roles, are something that could be available to you. And I know a lot of my friends who are actually working in trading of raw materials, sitting in Singapore. Their whole job is to work on trading platforms, try and understand the raw material supply, and look for demand and buy and sell. Because that's buy and sell is not very simple. While the margin could be 0.02%, but because you are dealing with very large volume, it could be large amount of money. So that could be a starting point of the kind of job that you are looking for, right? But we'll talk about some of the basics jobs. So to start with, what is operations management? As we talked about, it's not simply about converting raw material into products, but it's also about the strategy. How do you produce products? What products are required for the for the market? Let's say your marketing team comes and says this product is required, and they have all the market research data to say this product will be sold, this is a new product that customers are looking for. Marketing will come and tell you that, but the challenge for you will be, if you are the operations manager or supply chain manager, what inputs will be required? From where do I get inputs? And how do I make sure that I get inputs consistently? So if you decide to develop and invest in product, you need to have a assurance that that raw material will be available all the time, right? It shouldn't happen that you start the production and 2 months down the line you find you're not able to get raw material. Then what happens to your plant and machinery that you developed, that you invested in? So a lot would depend on how do you develop this whole strategy of supply chain, where starting from what raw material do I need, how will it get transported, if it is getting imported from somewhere, how will the whole process of import happen and it lands in your plant or wherever you are storing your raw material, so it's available to production guys to then produce. And then once the product is made, where will you ship it? Are you shipping it across the country? Are you exporting it, shipping to some other country and things like that? So this is a very big part of opportunity that would come in the space of operations. Now, therefore, operations role, when we will talk about later, will include strategic thinking about markets, about products. So don't think that if you take up operations role, you don't need to do anything around marketing or finance. Actually, operations guys have to understand both. Unless you understand the markets, if the marketing person, let's say he comes and sells the marketing idea to you, you should be able to challenge him enough to say, have you really thought about this? Have you thought about how the product will be developed? Is there a economy of scale? Are we building some USPs in our products and services? Or, is it just we are a Me Too product and therefore, everybody else is producing, we are also producing. Where is the competitive advantage? So you need to understand a bit of finance. You need to understand a bit of marketing. And obviously you need to understand the whole element of operations management. So that's the important element when we talk about operations management. Obviously, we are talking about creating value for customers, better use of resources, improving efficiency, innovation and competitiveness, improve goodwill. So, you will find typically in organizations that when they have some market pressure or cost pressure, the whole pressure of bringing efficiency and improvement comes on operations. Because who is using the maximum resources? Who is using the maximum resources? Operations, right? So you have all the people with you, all the plant and machinery with you, all the infrastructure with you. So you are the one who is going to consume most of the money. So the expectation on you will be, and that's why you need to build that skill of, we talked about problem solving. How do we make cost improvements? How do we really analyze costs? So again, I'm going to bring in elements of data analytics. So an operations manager is going to be an all-in-one manager. Remember, I've already talked about finance requirements, a marketing requirement. Now I'm saying data analytics is also required, because you have to bring efficiency. You have to analyze your production data. You have to analyze your import or your raw material data and cost and all those kind of stuff, and then present to management whether this kind of a cost saving is possible or not possible. Yeah, so operations manager role is actually going to be using your holistic knowledge that you will gain during your MBA course. It's not simply learning some nuances of project management or knowing to kind of do some technical aspect, but it's going to be finance, marketing, data analytics, and the whole project and program management aspect. Now, typically if you look at the top box, it is about operations strategy, process design and control, process improvement, and process execution, right? So, when you think about yourself, and try and map your own interest and capability with this. Okay, so if somebody who is an engineer may say, well, I want to focus on design and control, or I want to focus on operations strategy because I understand engineering and therefore I understand manufacturing pretty well. So think about what area you are going to kind of work on, because ultimately all these boxes give you opportunity. The input box gives you opportunity to become a procurement manager. Looking after resources, there are resource managers. So typically in companies you will find role called chief operations officer. And below that team there are people who run different aspect of operations, including things like resource management. Now while HR is there to hire people, manage people processes and all that stuff, but actual resources allocation, where should people be allocated to, who should get how many people, is again a function that's part of the operations management role, where you decide as a person based on some study, some analysis, okay, this department needs X people, this needs Y people, and you're all not only allocating, you're also monitoring. There used to be a very popular course in management earlier called industrial engineering, which is kind of dying a bit right now. And one of the example of this dying was that this premier industrial engineering institute in Mumbai has got converted to IIM Mumbai now. There used to be an institute called NITI, very famous for industrial engineering. I have personally been there, but now it's converted to be a IIM. So industrial engineering those days I think was very popular because technology wasn't there so much. So there used to be something called time and motion study. Okay, so you want to study the productivity of people, they will actually study and watch manually how a person behaves. So the person enters the gate, he spends 1 minute doing punching, then he spends 2 minutes doing this. They have to actually study that kind of stuff. Now that can be very easily automated today, right? You don't need to do that. Give an app and have some functions built in the app, and this whole process can actually be automated. So therefore that aspect has kind of come down. But there are areas that you need to focus on. If you come below that, operations and supply chain, project planning, process improvement, supply chain management. So broadly these are the areas that you will find as opportunities. Now why are we talking about operations as a very big area? Most of the time we think operations means manufacturing. Okay, and I talked about some example. Let me take some non-manufacturing example. Who is our marketing champion here? Who is the marketing champion? You can raise your hand or stand up. Who is the marketing champion? Can you stand up, Ashish? Don't worry, just stand up. Let's have a mic for Ashish. No, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you any tough questions. So just tell the team, that when the product is now ready to go to the customer, how should it reach to the customer? What's the way? How
Sir,
would the product reach the customer?
sir, logistics, sir.
Logistics. Anybody else want to has knowledge awareness about covering this? Yeah.
Sir,
Thank you, Ashish, for standing up.
through distribution channels,
Yeah.
and then it will go. First, it will go to warehouses. Then, from different location of warehouses, it will go to different type of distribution channels. Then, it will go to retail stores.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. So, see, this, why am I asking you question on this area? Because this area is transforming big time. Okay. So, when this model had come about 10, 15 years back, where a distributor like DMart could have cut all the distributors and retailers, could have gone directly to HUL and said, hey, HUL, through my stores, I can sell 5,000 tons of soaps, 20,000 liters of your shampoo. I don't need any distributor or dealer. I will buy directly from you. What happens to supply chain management? And imagine you work for DMart and you are the supply chain manager. Does your work increase or decrease? Increase. So you are now going to negotiate with who? With HUL supply chain head, saying, give me this price because I have promised my customers to give 7% discount on every product. So I need 30%. So, if I cut down my 8%, it's 15% down, 15% my profit. So imagine the power that you will hold as DMart supply chain manager to negotiate with HUL, saying, I can give you this big bulk. Can you give me this price? And then you are going to not only talk about price, but the whole lot of how will you. So now it's no longer this distributor, that distributor. From HUL's warehouse to DMart's warehouse. And you need to organize trucks to carry the material from here to there. But you have a challenge. You have to manage your own warehouse now. So as a DMart supply chain head, you actually created a totally new vertical for yourself and cut down all those distributors and dealers who are making the process inefficient. This is now gaining ground big time. This is now gaining ground big time. And different models are coming. Now here is an opportunity for you to think about models. Why did a delivery company came into being when there were already so many other logistic players? So logistic and supply chain is a very big area. If some of you are thinking that I want to have my own startup, it's a great area to have startups because there are so many problems to be solved in this space. And we don't have enough problems to be solved in this space. I was just thinking of a very simple use case based on my own personal requirement. Whenever I go to a restaurant to eat something, I have to always say, "Isme sugar to nahi dala," because I am a diabetic. And today in every product to give that taste, they put sugar. I'm just thinking, can we have some QR code put on the food where I can just scan with my mobile and actually get to see the ingredient including the sugar content? Can this be a business opportunity? It can be potentially, right? So, again, this is a very small example I'm giving, but you can think about so much. If you look at logistic and supply chain, one of the reasons why India is not competitive globally is because of our supply chain cost. And I think we spoke in the last session, what is the supply chain cost of India typically versus global? How much do we spend on supply chain? Because of various processes we have, inefficiencies we have, and all that stuff. How much? So roughly out of total cost, 12 to 13% of India's GDP goes into supply chain cost. So imagine, we have all seen trains carrying so much of goods, right? We have seen big trucks and trailers carrying. We see them getting stuck somewhere. We find that earlier there used to be dozens of taxes. Now, thank God, government has brought in one GST, where at least now you can move around the country and just one tax needs to be paid. But we still know that there are specific zones divided where special taxes are still levied in the country. right? Now, if we can bring this 12, 13% to 7, 8%, which is the global benchmark, imagine the amount of money you save in the GDP, and that money can be put back into the economy to kind of bring the growth, right? So again, that's a very big area for you to think about. Whenever you join a company in this area, think about what you can do very different to not only redesign the process of supply chain management, but where is the real cost going in? How can I really reduce the cost? And even a 1-2% of this cost will mean millions and billions of dollars, right? So that's a very important area. Now, I was going to talk about new age tech companies. I was actually going to talk about banking and operations in banking, because many times we only think about operations in these companies, like defense sector or engineering sector or automobile sector. What is the use case of operations in banking sector? It's a very big area, but it's not been talked about so much because there has been a indirect way of manning that department. And I've seen that function working for many, many years. Having worked in RBS, I've seen how banking operations get managed. How many of you have got, dreams of managing large teams, 500 people team, 1000 people team, 2000 people team? How many? Wow, quite a few of you. So, you should consider banking operations as an area. And who is the finance champion here? Akhil. Who is Akhil? Charchit. Come on. Let's hear from. Let's give a round of applause to him. Come on. Okay, so let's talk about banking operations. Okay, take the mic. So imagine you go to HDFC Bank to open the bank account, right? What happens when you go to open a bank account?
They ask for identity.
They ask for some identity, some form needs to be filled.
Yes, sir.
Now it is online as well. And so somebody completes that process. But do you think what happens after that? After 4 days, you get an envelope with checkbooks and debit cards. Who gives you that? That person in the branch?
Not, sir.
Who gives you that?
By the post office.
It's the banking operations. So as soon as your data have a seat. I'm just taking a very simple example. So as soon as your data enters the system, gets validated, the backend guy sitting in Chennai, Hyderabad or Bangalore, their work starts. And this whole cycle of going and checking your KYC, validating all your documents, looking at RBI requirements, looking at whether you fulfill that requirements, checking AML, all kind of background verification for you, whether are you a terrorist? Have you siphoned some money from somewhere? They will do all kinds of checks. Automated checks happen and the system says green. This customer is good to be onboarded. And then they follow the on. So imagine this whole front facing work of opening the account is only 5-7% of the work. The real work of that 90% is happening at the back end. And if you imagine any bank, whether a retail bank, a corporate bank, an investment bank, a wealth management company, an insurance company, all of them, the biggest number of people who work in those companies are operations people. And who gets employed in those companies? Most of the time, who are the typical employees? Normal graduates. Because they are the one who do all those operational activities, right? Typically, if you go to a Gurgaon, a very famous term that you will use is back office, BPO. A very common word, and I have grown in that BPO space for 15 years in Delhi NCR. I've seen the whole BPO market growing. Typically, normal graduates work there. Their salaries have been 8,000, 10,000, 12,000. Now it has gone to 18, 20, 25,000. That's the kind of range. They are the people who man these teams called banking operations. And who leads them? It is the MBAs who lead them. Because obviously of their education, they have got limited functional skill. Most of the time they come in the company and they are trained, and they get trained over months and months to do the process, and they do repetitive process. But they don't bring that strategic thinking, that thinking about planning, the thinking about how to manage customers' requirements, how to talk to the customer. Because a lot of that work, if you let's say look at global banks in India, and a lot of global banks have their operations set up, you have to talk to the global customers, So similar transaction is happening in London in a bank branch. And as soon as the transaction enters, the operations work moves to India in Chennai. And the guy sitting in Chennai actually starts looking at the document, whatever was submitted, and he starts the process. So you need to understand the global banking, you need to understand your global customers. And this is where you come into the picture. So the team leads of those teams, the managers of those teams, the program managers, the delivery managers, the heads, the directors are typically people with management skills. Now, what I've seen is in the past, a lot of people have grown in the process because we didn't have enough MBAs coming in those companies, or you will see engineers typically growing, gaining skills and growing. But that's an area that you can add a lot of value because of the educational background you have. Because remember, you understand finance. Tomorrow, let's say you need to expand this team by 50% and you are asked to make a business case. Who will make the business case? Who will do the cost benefit analysis? Should I move 1000 people work from Edinburgh to Chennai? Who will do that analysis? So that's where your skills will come of knowing finance. So please don't think that you can run away from finance. Even as a marketing person, basics of finance are required. So please, when you are taught about basics of financial management, learn that skill. It's very important that you become comfortable with financial numbers. Your ability to learn, know at least balance sheet. What does left hand side of the balance sheet mean? What does right hand side mean? What is a P&L account? Because as a marketing person, your CEO will challenge you on those questions, saying, your P&L is pathetic. The cash flow is not there. While you're selling, your debtor days have gone to 180 days. The company is not getting money. Now don't ask him question, what is debtor days, sir? Right? So therefore you need to see, that's why there is a design, why AICT has designed the MBA program to include all the basics of finance, marketing, HR. A specialization doesn't mean that you forget all of those. I'm not a marketing person, but I've tried to learn marketing and skills of marketing because I know when I'm doing business development, even in finance, I need marketing skills, I need sales skills, right? So therefore don't forget about, you can specialize in something, but don't forget the basics of people management. All the HR stuff that you learned, when you handle a team of 500 people or 1000 people, those skills of being an HR manager will be useful, because then you can ask your HR partner to say, can you help me in this? I need a model for talent development. I want people to be retained. Can you give me strategies around that? And unless you yourself know, how will you, ask questions to your HR manager? So therefore it's important. So I just want to give you this perspective because there's obviously this space has been growing for a lot, but in fact 2 or 3 days back there was an article in Economic Times of why all the global companies, earlier banking companies have come to India, now literally all global companies are setting up their global capability centers in India. Anybody has heard of global capability center? No? So all these setups of, you've heard about companies like Barclays and UBS all having centers in Pune or Bangalore or Hyderabad. Do you think, what do they do in those setups in India? What do they do? Operations. Yeah. They provide this facility worldwide. So they are giving services to their worldwide customers, right? And this is gaining ground in India. So while it started with banking, actually if you look at, I'm not very surprised, one of my peers in RBS who actually went to HBS last year and did the same course which I did, has actually set up a new startup to help companies globally set up GCCs in India, because it's a very big business. NASSCOM has projected that there'll be 5,000 new companies setting up shops in India from globally. Because see, whether you are a bank or whether you are automobile company, let's say take example of any automobile marketing company, right? Once you have done your car sales in the showroom, this whole process of taking that data to your production plant, planning that out, giving a timeline for delivery of your car, telling your customer this is when the car will come, getting your car here, delivering, is the operations role. And there's so much required to be done in this space. And believe me, this is the space where you build your customer loyalty and satisfaction. Because most of the people, why are they dissatisfied? Because marketing guys will commit, sir दिवाली के एक दिन पहले आपको मिल जाएगा, and दिवाली क्या न्यू ईयर भी पार हो गया, नहीं मिला. And if you as an operations person is aligned to your marketing person, you will make sure कि धनतेरस को मिल जाएगा. Right? So that's the bit that you need to do, because he will just promise. Maybe he doesn't have insight into what goes after his promise is made. How is this promise going to be converted into real output? He may not be thinking. But the whole burden comes on you, or the whole load comes on you कि boss मैंने तो promise कर दिया, अब तू देख कैसे deliver करना है. So that's the bit that you need to be very, very, focused on. So therefore, there are umpteen number of opportunities in this space. And that's where we are talking about this space. Okay, let's see what are the challenges. We talked about a lot of opportunities. What are the challenges in operations
Despite the
management?
difficulties in operations management, the objective is to balance the organization's costs and maximize profitability in any scenario. Let's look at the most worrying problems in operations management that may be keeping you up at night. Don't worry, you are not alone. Streamlining processes. Every area of the firm has something to improve, even if the organization has been performing the same task for years. As with any business, there will always be areas that need to be updated. As the manager, you must track market changes, consumer trends, and government regulations on a regular basis. It is critical for you to be adaptable in these areas in order for the company to stay open and competitive. Scheduling a regular procedure audit will assist you in detecting areas that are slowing down the company. Being proactive in this scenario may prevent problems in operations management from getting out of hand and becoming a problem before they reach your attention. Extreme care should be exercised when performing data entry, since minor mistakes can add up and be costly to an organization, especially if they are repeated many times. The problem frequently has to do with unclear procedures, vague standards, and conflicting implementation in rules. It might be more difficult to lead people back to the correct path when they have been accustomed to a wrong method. Operations management has several problems, one of which is detecting and correcting flaws in procedures. Consumer satisfaction. Customer approval is a key indicator of performance in operations management, and it must be prioritized and continuously monitored. Customer satisfaction is affected by such activities as processing returns, investigating complaints, and addressing concerns. Dependability is one of the most important qualities for ensuring the success of operations, according to studies. Customers will be more loyal to your business if you deliver consistent, quick, and dependable customer service. Customers are aware that the product or service that they buy may contain issues. They anticipate a positive experience, however, to make up for the inconvenience. It is your duty to ensure that client problems are addressed promptly and adequately. Internal conflicts. In operations management, there are numerous unavoidable challenges. It is your responsibility as a manager to diffuse quarrels and lead everyone to an agreeable conclusion that all parties can accept. When everyone is in a bad mood and rushing to meet deadlines and targets, the chance of it happening isn't nil, especially when many are stressed out. Teams from various departments are frequently the ones that clash because of disparate goals. For example, the development manufacturing team may come into conflict with the marketing team since the former sells goods and services that the latter understands are beyond reach. To make matters worse, the finance department may put additional pressure on the development crew to do what the marketing team wants because once finished, the project has the potential to generate a substantial profit. Clashes between teams deplete the productivity and efficiency of an entire company. This is a kind of situation that operations management may get stuck on. Establishing clear-cut standards that everyone in the firm must adhere to might help resolve this problem. To guarantee that everyone is on the same page when it comes to the company's goals, capabilities, and limitations, open communication must be enforced across departments. Productivity concerns. Finding methods to increase productivity is one of the issues you will face in operations management. It's part of your job to push people to work more efficiently, quickly, and productively. But the onus is on the technique. Those who are already putting out their best efforts might be at their wits' end. Pushing people to do more without first assessing the workload, capacity, or situation may have the opposite effect of encouraging them to reach their full potential. The ideal approach to tackle operational management problems is to have the proper measurements in place. Create KPIs to measure each employee's performance and see which areas may be improved to boost productivity and efficiency. For those who do not pass the test, offer assistance programs that can be led by more experienced and senior team members. If you give someone clear instructions before they start working, they are less likely to make mistakes. Business continuity. The COVID pandemic has introduced new operational difficulties as it continues to upend established methods and long-term objectives. In situations like these, there is no room for dawdling since the company is provided with only two options: to develop or die. You must devise methods to endure and flourish during a crisis with restricted production, restricted supply, disrupted workforce availability, uncertainty in rules, and seesawing market demands. With a changing climate, we need to rethink the way in which we operate and create new solutions to keep market relevance and customer demand. Want to dive deeper into operations management tips? Check out the playlist on screen now.
Okay, so I saw some of you taking some notes. What are the key elements that came out? What key challenges came out? Let's have somebody at the back answering. What challenges could you see? Business continuity, that was quite evident. And why is business continuity so important?
For the development of the business, and the continuity of the business, because every business is run to earn profit, and if business is not continued, how are we going to earn profit and provide service to persons?
Yeah, and take more live examples. So business continuity will mean that if you've got products and services being shipped, take example of the companies that we are very familiar about, e-commerce companies, right? You made an order on Amazon, next day delivery, and you actually had a big outage in your warehouse. How will you make next day delivery? What will customer feel when the next day delivery promise is not met? And he is a Amazon Prime customer. He is used to getting all his orders in 24 hours. That's the business continuity we are talking about, right? Why did you promise one day delivery? And so gaining, yeah, okay, carry on.
So for like gaining customers confidence in the company that we are sticking to our word, and if we are saying that we are going to deliver the product in one day, and we are doing that. And
we are doing that. And how did you get that confidence that yes, I will be able to deliver in one day?
So all because of the operation that is happening back end, that we know that how the supply chain work, and if we can actually provide the promise that we are giving to the customers.
So in the reality, what will happen is, let's say your customer sits in Pune, and you actually have a big warehouse in Pune, and you know that 80% of the product which normally customers order are actually in Pune. So therefore your confidence level that as soon as the order is given by the customer, my team will take 2 hours to pack it and keep it ready for delivery. And early morning the delivery starts. But imagine if you were delivering this to a place called Belgaum, and 500 kilometers of radius of Belgaum there is no warehouse of Amazon. Would you promise one day delivery? Then how will you meet? So do you think there will be no Amazon Prime customers in Belgaum? How will you meet this requirement? How will constructing local warehouses, that could be one solution, but that's a lot of capital investment. Third party logistic. So can I have my third party logistic partners ready who can actually come to my door in 30 minutes time? My team will pack the goods in the night. Early morning 4 o'clock, can I take third party service providers help and deliver in the next 7 hours my goods reach Belgaum? So again, these are the ideas you will have to think about, and then have those ideas laid on the table to say, these are my 5 options I'm going to use. And that's where you have to play a role. Who will think about those ideas? Not those guys who are sitting in the warehouses, right? As an operations manager, as warehouse manager, you have to think of those strategies. And that is where your role becomes important. Okay, what else did we talk about? What were the other challenges? Internal conflict. And who thinks that all conflict management is done by HR people? That's what everybody thinks, right? Problem is there, go to HR and talk to HR. But actually it is not HR which solves the conflict. It is the manager, the business head. So if you are dealing with thousands of people in your plant, if there is a conflict, you have to deal with that conflict. You should know the tricks of dealing with a conflict. So conflict management is important. What else did we talk about earlier? Productivity. How will you solve productivity? So let's say we are talking about in the plant productivity, right? You want to really see whether your people are really spending 8 hours which they are supposed to spend. How are they doing it? Do you have mechanisms to make sure that they are supported? So if you go to how many of you been to a automobile plant? Anybody? So you'll find a very very interesting thing that people don't move out from their places unless they need to go to a loo. The water is served to them, all their tea and coffee is served. They take a very quick 15-20 minutes lunch break in a very local place, and the whole objective is you should be near your machine and work. So I will make sure that you get all the facilities once you enter the plant. You don't need to run around and say, oh, I was not getting tea, so I went to canteen and I took 1.5 hours break to have tea and come back. Your 1.5 hours is lost. How will you make up for that production, right? So therefore, again, as an operations manager, and therefore I'm going to bring one more complexity to operations manager, technology. So now you need to learn about what are those technology tools you can use to track your people working in the plant and operations and check and understand their productivity. How many hours are they really spending in the plant? How will you come to know? And who produced how many units? So all these things can be actually checked and verified through technology. So again, as an operations manager, you need to be very comfortable with technology because technology is now getting big time in manufacturing and operations. Operations is all about, so when we talk about AI/ML and the impact on jobs, one of the immediate impact you will find is a lot of these manual jobs being done. You will be asked to say, give me 15% reduction in manpower. You will say, how sir, how will I give you 15%? They will say, go and use AI and ML. Think about what will you do? And that's where you will have to think about use cases to say, okay, how do I use machine learning techniques? How do I automate my manufacturing? What should I do in my process? Where can I automate my process in a bigger way? So those thinking you will have to do, to kind of bring that. So what is supply chain management? The broad elements: procurement, operations, distribution, and integration. It's like how do you really get and distribute your product. So you have to think about things like demand management. How will demand be known to you? Who will tell you about the demand? Marketing team. So there's always a demand forecasting team who get input from marketing. They will tell you your schedule for the week, schedule for the month. You need to kind of work out a plan. This is what marketing has said, over the next 3 months I need to produce. So you make a schedule accordingly. And then you will look at, okay, now that I have a schedule, how do I get my raw materials? Do I have enough storage facility available? And imagine if there is a breakdown in my plant. On one hand I'm keeping so much of raw material, on the other side there's no supply going on. So how do I make sure that my plant runs? So therefore the whole focus will be on the plant people, who are producing, to make sure that they are supported very well to kind of produce and use the raw material. Otherwise you would have imported goods, waiting for you at the port because there's no space in the plant to kind of bring them in and store them. So there's something called demurrage cost you have to incur. because something has landed at the port and you are not able to bring in. So you have to make sure that supply chain management is covered. Product portfolio management. How is that important? How is product portfolio management important? What is a portfolio? Yeah, what's a portfolio? Excellent, very good. And what is the significance of these 10 products?
So significant of these product will be like let's say product one is like highly in demand, product two is less in demand. So you need to make sure that your warehouse is completely filled with those in terms of demand.
Excellent, thank you so much. So there are 10 products, their volumes could be very different. The cycle time at which they are requested by customers could be very different. You know, their cost, their value could be different. You know, so for example, when you have got target to increase your top line, as a production manager, you may say, I am going to focus on those top 4 products where I get maximum revenue. And you may tell your team, okay, let's divert some production, let's focus on these 4 because they are the one which will give me the maximum revenue, you know, and you will push for that. So again, you have to kind of play with your portfolio. You need to understand how your portfolio costs, how much revenue do you generate, where do you earn margin. So let's say tomorrow in the management meeting you are told, while we are doing very well on our plans, guys, our margin is under pressure. So I want you to change the product mix and accordingly produce. So what will you do? What will you do? Like his portfolio of 10 products, what will you do with the 10 products? You will look at the 10 product, look at their cost and sales numbers, do some kind of a filtering on you know, profitability. Which one gives you the maximum margin? And you will say, okay, these 3 gives me the maximum margin. Guys, let's have 80% of products on these 3. Let's produce more and more of these 3 and we ship it. We push these 3. Okay, so those kind of strategies you can adopt as a operations manager or a supply chain manager. And the most important element, you know, some of the element is how do you maintain an agile model of delivery so that there is a continuous flow, there is an efficient chain, there is a fast chain, you are able to move things in a very, very planned manner because the downtime available is very, very small. You know, you will not have, most of the plants typically take, let's say, once in a month they may take a few hours downtime. Every 3 months they may take maybe 1 or 2 downtime, 1 or 2 day downtime, right? That's the only level of error you have that you can do. So how well you run, how well your team is maintaining the plant is equally important to make sure that your plant is available to run. Now this is a pictorial view. We talked about it. Just familiarize yourself to say how does the supply chain process works from raw material to customer. Right? We are clear on this? Yes, what about this? So each of these boxes actually is an area that you need to focus on. Incoming goods, assisted order packing, you know, replenishment. This whole process is where you need to focus on. And you know, when you have to think about supply chain time reduction, you have to look at this flow. Why am I showing you this flow? Because when you do problem solving, always use this kind of pictorial approach to solve the problem. So whenever a problem needs to be solved, try and, you know, picture that problem to say, okay, how does the overall model or process look like? Once you put this kind of a picture, then you can say, okay, let me now see how much time is taken where. And once you see the time and you want to analyze where is the maximum time being spent and why, you'll get to see, oh, maybe replenishment is where I'm getting the maximum time stuck. Now then you can go and investigate and say, okay, why is it taking so much time on, you know, replenishment? And then you can go deep into the data and analyze and things like that. So very important that when you're solving a problem, try and picturize the situation. and that will help you better understand the problem and the situation of the problem. Sometimes this also helps you re-engineer the process, and you may say, why am I using this process? There's no need. The value add of this step seems to be very minimal. Can we do away with this step and just add one activity to the previous step and remove one big step totally? Now you not only remove a big step, you actually remove the people working there, and they can be deployed somewhere else. So thereby you can improve the productivity. You can do better deployment of resources. Okay, let's see a quick
Supply
slide.
chain management, or SCM, involves the planning and execution of processes required to convert raw materials into finished goods, including the procurement of materials, production, fulfillment, and support. The strains on the supply chain are many and, when not properly managed, can cripple a business, leaving it unable to produce goods or fulfill customer orders. Effective supply chain management provides visibility into inventory levels and detects potential disruptions along the supply chain, helping businesses meet demand, fulfill orders at the lowest cost possible, and deliver a positive customer experience.
So think about a big furniture company. Which is the big furniture company? IKEA. So IKEA has got a huge supply chain management roles available, and they have got this whole supply chain needs to be managed in a most powerful way. Now imagine, with all the rules and regulations around woods, how do you procure good quality wood? How do you use some of the wastages and then create woods, of artificial wood and things like that? So a lot of stuff needs to be done in such companies, in supply chain. And therefore, if you see that whenever we talk about supply chain, we're always talking about a whole picture, step by step approach. So it's a very logical way of looking at a business. Okay, we talked about this, but I think let me just revise this element. We talked about this earlier. If this is the most traditional way of your supply chain, that you've got a raw material supplier, it comes to your factory, gets produced, then you typically have a wholesaler, the person who is typically controls a state, and all the products of your company for that state comes to the wholesaler. He is the one who's got a big warehouse where he stores all that. From there it goes to distributor, which could be a district distributor or a city based distributor. From there it goes to vendors and retailers, and from where it goes. This is the most traditional way. Now if you look at this, this is where a lot of inefficiency has got built in, because imagine if everybody puts 10 to 15% margin, something being produced in 30 rupees will ultimately end up becoming 85 rupees, right? And this is what has been happening in our supply chain process. So therefore now this whole automation about from producer, can I straight away go to the customer? So these big 3 boxes totally go out, right? Even globally this is happening, where a lot of global distributors are just building one hub. Let's say if India becomes hub, then you can actually supply across the Southeast Asia. And that's what the government is trying, that some of our big airports can actually become distribution hubs. So, let's say you are a European based player, you actually bring all your goods to India, put it in Nagpur or Pune in a big warehouse, and from here it gets distributed to Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, all those places. That's how you do a hub and spoke model of distribution. Okay, again, supply chain management can look very complex, because you have to again go step by step. Yeah, but the most important thing is to really understand the value in supply chain. Each of these boxes, what you need to be doing is, when you are, let's say, asked and said, okay, as a consultant, you want to analyze supply chain of a particular company, what will you do? What is the first step you will do? Map. So whenever somebody tells you to do something, understand the process, map the process, create multiple boxes, show a flow from one step to the other. Because once you see this picture in front of you, you will be able to pinpoint some very simple gaps can be seen very easily. Because most of the time, people verbally talk, and therefore they are not able to picturize their problem. So one of the simple way of solving a problem is to picturize the problem. Try and bring the problem in front of you, because that itself will tell you why so many boxes are required, or why so many arrows are going from here and there. Can I reduce? Because each of these box is a cost. Each of this arrow is a cost and time. So can I reduce some box? Can I reduce some arrow? That itself will bring 20-30% efficiency. Okay. So if you're taking one learning on supply chain management today, take this. Problem solving first technique is picture the problem. Understand the process end to end. And try and understand where is your time, effort, money is going in these boxes. And basis that, then you can start doing the analysis. Okay, what are some of the goals in supply chain? What do companies look for? Remember, we talked about improving efficiency and quality. These are two different elements, but this is one of the important things that you will do as a manager in a supply chain company, or in a company where you're managing supply chain. How do you improve productivity? Which means if a machine is producing X, how can you produce delta, X plus delta? If a employee is producing Y, how do you get Y plus delta? This will be one important requirement from you. Two, what will be quality here? What is the biggest thing about quality we hear today from customers? What comes back from customer? Feedback. But what else comes back from the customer?
Again, order again.
Order again or returned goods. I see this very common thing. My daughter does this. They order some clothes, they wear it, and they return it. I said, how can you do this? I said, look, I just tried it out. It didn't work out for me. So imagine companies dealing so much of returned goods. This is a very big metric for e-commerce companies. And how will you manage that element? And if you read the analysis why that has been returned, that becomes important. In many cases, there are genuine cases why people need to return. Because one very common problem on clothes is the size. The size is given in terms of a number. Now, it may not fit the Indian definition of that number. And therefore, when people actually try it out, they find that, well, it's not fitting. And therefore, they just return it. So, that's where this quality comes in. So, how do you reduce this percentage of return is going to be a very big benefit and money saving for the company. So, each of these elements are important. So, efficiency, quality, transportation and logistic. What will you do? How will you do? If you really look at the reality is that our transportation is still done by most of those people are less educated. They may be driving under very tough conditions. So remember, recently the government has announced that all the truck drivers' cabin has to be fully air conditioned. Till now it is not. And I remember, this is 1998 and I'm just thinking, why have others not done it? In 1997-98, Tata Steel made their dumper driver's cabin air conditioned. Way back in 97, because these guys go in coal mines under very tough conditions to operate their big trucks. So imagine we did in Tata Steel in 97 and till now the whole country has not done it. Now because of this government law, every new truck has to be an air conditioned cabin for the drivers. Earlier, if you see the older ones, you will not even find place for them to take rest. But if you go to new trucks now, or even buses now, behind the drivers, it's such a simple thing, but it's very important. Behind the driver's seat, you will find two rakes where people can lie down and take rest. So one driver can drive, one can take rest. These are very important measures because they are actually carrying so much valuable product for your company, right? They are the one who are generating turnover and revenue, because once their truck reaches the customer, you get money. So you need to think about your people from that perspective. So transportation and logistics is a very big area, and therefore some of the companies, if you join, and don't get worried if you have to do that, they will tell you, go and ride a truck in Shimla and go all the way up to Trivandrum and see what happens in the 2 days or 3 days of traveling together, because that is where you will find what are the real challenges faced by these drivers. Where do they have to stop? How many times policemen stops them? How many times they are stopped by the check gates? Where do they face problem? All those kind of logistic problems you'll be able to understand. Reducing cost, we've talked about it. Customer satisfaction. This will be a very important area. You know, some of you who want to do a desk job or sit in air conditioned room and do job, you can specialize in this box called customer satisfaction management. You can sit in an air conditioned room, learn some data analytics, do some analysis of data on customer satisfaction, make recommendation, do 1, 2, 3, 4 to improve customer. You can do that. This is a good area. You can do this for 2, 3 years at least. So this is another area which is very important. As MBAs, you can target to do customer satisfaction and things like that. So these are some of the goals that supply chain has in terms of, you know, fulfilling company's requirement. Now, what are some of the advantages? I think we talked about how do you optimize resources, how do you better quality control, how do you build a agile business, better visibility and data analytics. How many of you know companies are putting a lot of technology for this better visibility? How can you manage, how can you create better visibility in supply chain by using technology? Who is a technology man here? Who is a technology man or technology woman? Huh? Tanoj. Who is Tanoj? Tanoj. How is technology being used in logistic and supply chain?
Sir, there is supply chain analytics. So with the help of that, we can analyze the channels that are
But
there.
how will the data come? What tool will you use to get the data?
So there are databases. So we can use SQL to get the data from it, and then we can use Power BI to analyze it
Okay.
and provide the visualizations.
And what technology can be used? Anybody else who wants to answer? Yeah, what technology can be used? GPS. GPS is one very important technology being used. What else? ERPs? To evaluate. So I'm just talking about tools. So tools like ERPs are now cloud-based ERPs are available, which can tell you, you know, small step performance data you can get. Like he talked about, you know, we can get. So a lot of these new technologies are actually being used to make sure that you are able to capture data. Like he talked about data analytics and, you know, all of that. But that can only happen when you're able to capture the data. So now if you put GPS, the GPS tracker can tell you exactly what is happening minute by minute. And sitting in the control room, a person can actually find out your thousands of trucks are on the road in various parts of the country. Where are they? Where are they stuck? Where do you see? You know, have you seen Uber saying your vehicle has been, you know, stationary for a longer time? Any problem? Do we help? Have you seen this message? How are they tracking you? So we are talking about similar tracking. Can you proactively reach out to your driver and say, your truck has been standing for more than 30 minutes. Our data shows you shouldn't be standing more than 8 minutes. Is something wrong? Can I help you? And he says, he presses the button and says, yes. And your call center calls him back and says, tell me what's the problem. And he's stuck somewhere and you help him and you solve the problem. So instead of he getting stuck for 4 hours, you solve him in 1 hour 15 minutes. So you save 2 hour 45 minutes, right? So that's the technology you need to use. And you have to think about that based on your own business requirement. I'm just giving you one use case as an example. Okay, what are the challenges? Now we heard so much. Let's hear from you. What are the challenges in supply chain? Can somebody answer what are the challenges? You see the slide in front. What are the challenges? You should know, before you take up any job, you should understand the challenge of the job as well. Don't just jump because you think, oh, there's so much benefits I talked about, right? What are the challenges? Do you understand cost? Can you analyze and predict? And can you actually, you know, advise what are the cost saving mechanisms? You know, so saving cost will always be a pressure on you to say, you need to reduce your budget by 5%. I don't know how you will do it, but that's your task. And you will say, but sir, I already took 15% cut this year. He said, doesn't matter, I need another 5% cut from you. So saving cost is a very big ask on supply chain management professionals. Reducing inventory, there will be various things you can do, but just understand that managing cost, you know, you need to trade off between cost and quality. You need to trade off between, so recently have you seen the thought process of Amazon changing in the Indian market? Any thought process change have you seen? And these things, as a user, we all look at it, but always look at it from a business manager perspective. Recently, Amazon has changed their strategy. What is that? Returns without asking a question. So if you look at 1 year data, the whole return process of Amazon was not so great. So what Amazon's strategy is, build that Indian connect very strong. If you look at their big billion day sale, they always talk about India, Amazon being part of India ecosystem, right? So they're now saying, anybody in India, you buy anything, I will take return without asking any question, which is very different Amazon from what it was 2 years back. So they're doing this to build confidence. So what will it mean? First time you want to order something, where will you think of going? Amazon. I heard one of my friends saying, don't buy mobiles from Flipkart, they give you used mobiles. Now imagine if I get this feedback, will I ever go on Flipkart to buy mobile? No, I will not go. So again, this is a very important, how do you position your strategy? And somebody will develop this strategy, but you will have to execute the strategy. So imagine you were Amazon's procurement head and somebody said, we want to have this return policy unquestioned. So you have to build that infrastructure for a very fast. You know that every return costs money for you, right? How will you make sure? So now I see this, that the same person coming for delivery, he actually takes things back, gives you back. So one to and fro going and back is saved. Can you plan that way? Can your technology work in that manner? It may look very simple, but imagine the thought process that somebody would have put in to design that model, that when will my person go to pick it up, and by the time something is available to be delivered as well. So they have that kind of a data analytics have to be used. So guys, next 10, 15 years, if you want to make career in management, data analytics is a must. You work in any field in management. The other day we were talking in HR. How would you use data science and data analytics and machine learning in HR? That is the trend. So if you're doing any course on data analytics, take it very seriously. Learn tools. Make sure that each one of you learn basic about data analytics. Otherwise, you will find challenge when you are operating in any company. Okay? So these are things that you have to learn. So that's one on managing cost. The other element, I think, which not many people will think, but as a manager, you need to think is, how do I comply to laws and regulations and things like that? Okay? Because many a times people think that will be managed. Don't be in that mode, okay? Be in a mode that as a company, we will manage laws and regulations proactively. We'll not get into problems and then we'll try solving it. We will rather not have those problems. So risk management, trying to understand what can go wrong and how can I make sure that that is thought through properly, actions are thought through, and think, like for example, let's say your truck guy is carrying some very valuable material. Let's say you're supplying for, our aircraft mission, some very valuable product worth some hundreds of crores. How will you create a backup in a manner that your truck doesn't get stopped anywhere? If your driver falls sick, what's your strategy to make sure that he is taken care of, material doesn't get stuck, so you need to really think through this whole thing. Therefore, always have the second element I said, draw a picture. Second is think about value. In supply chain management, most important thing is value. What value are you delivering? That value needs to be protected and managed. If you're delivering very high value item, make sure that your strategy aligns with the high value delivery. Okay, don't leave your high value delivery to risk and chances. So manage your risk appropriately. Okay, we talked about visibility and transparency. So these are some of the stuff that you need to work on. Now, I'm going to talk about global supply chain as well. So remember, initially I referred about global supply chain, and one of the challenge the world is facing today. What has happened in near Somalia last few days back? What has happened in Red Sea? Hijack. What has been hijacked? Ship. So what has happened to the global supply chain? How many of you love geography? So can somebody just mentally draw a picture for me? Let's hear from somebody here. Who loves geography here? Anshul. No, say some name here. Who loves geography? I saw a lot of hands here. One name, so I can take up that name. Gitanjali. Okay, I hear a word Gitanjali. Gitanjali, please. Let's give a round of applause to Gitanjali. So what's important about Red Sea right now? In the global supply chain. What has happened? Have you heard of any news recently which has happened? You're not aware about that. Okay, no problem. Have a seat. Anybody else wants to?
Sir,
Okay. I have someone here volunteering. Okay, go ahead.
so what is happening is currently Yemen, which is controlled half by Houthi rebels. So what they are doing because of the Israel and Palestine conflict, for supporting, like, they both belongs to a Muslim by religion, right? So what Houthi rebels are saying ki you don't destroy that part of the country. So what they are doing, they are disrupting the supply chain during the Red Sea. Now that is a challenge for countries like India, which comes in the global south part of it, India, Indonesia, that part. So the supply chain has been disrupted. Now what ship does?
Can you pictorially just make a image?
So this side is like Yemen,
Yeah,
and
let's
this side
hear,
is
yep.
Somalia, right?
Right.
So what ship does कि Somalia की तरफ ना जाके वो लोग इस तरफ से जा रहे हैं.
Come this side.
Now because of that, what is happening? Somalia pirates, we have already heard about them in past. So these pirates start capturing that ship, and now what is happening? Ki now they would capture that ship for ransom. Now India is also doing great in that field, since the Arabian Sea is currently in the control of India, and the INS Chennai, I believe, yesterday, the Marcos commander went there, and
And they
there
managed
were
to control.
there were
Okay,
about-
good. Let's give a round of applause. Thank you. Okay, he gave us a full picture. I was looking at very simple pictures. If you draw the map of the world, and if you, let's say, if I place India here and China here, right? Africa is here. So normally if you have to go to Europe, you have to travel like this. So imagine this is the route you take. But if you have Red Sea operating, you travel like this. So it's almost like 1/4 travel. Yeah, Panama Canal. So Panama Canal is on the other side. This is the Red Sea we are talking about. Same case is there. But the fact is that it's a very narrow water body which can connect to Europe very, very quick. So imagine if you're traveling from Shanghai, and if I tell you go take all the way of Cape of Capricorn and go all the way South Africa and then deliver, it's a very long route. Now why is this important for supply chain? Understand this. Because of China being world's largest economy in manufacturing, it goes ahead of US. Today if you look at containers through which goods are transported globally, 50% of world containers are with China. 50% of world, what does it mean? China gets goods filled on those containers. They go and distribute across the world. Because they import very little, very small part of those containers are filled with imported materials. In most cases, empty containers are coming back. So if your supply chain line is very long, it will take that much long time for empty containers to come back. And that is creating a big bottleneck in global supply chain because of this control that China has. Okay, so obviously you have to do many strategies, and therefore India's strategy has been very clear. We want to be independent of a US or a Russia or others. We want to just make sure that our business runs, and therefore we are trying to safeguard our interests by doing something in the Red Sea. So therefore some of these logistic elements, knowing geography, if you are a logistic person, helps. Because if you can visualize, if somebody says, where is Trivandrum? And if you say north part of India, then you had it, right? If you don't know that Nagpur sits right at the center of the country, and if you build a warehouse there, maybe the distribution lines become the shortest across India. So you need to have that level of appreciation at least on the geography front to help you kind of think through as a global person. Now, because of this one element I talked about, also because of manufacturing skew in China, raw material skew in Australia or Africa, lot of goods have to move globally from here and there. And therefore, global supply chain is a very big opportunity. So if you join a company where you can learn about global supply chain. So let's take example, you take large automobile players, you join Bajaj Auto and join in their export wing. Learn about this whole export supply chain. That's a good area to build your career. Okay. Similarly, you join, let's say, Adani Group, and they import a lot of raw material. You learn the whole strategy around importing raw materials from various countries. How do you, trade on raw materials? How do you find out when the costs are going to go down? What will you do? All those strategies and tactics you need to learn. So if you are a supply chain person, if you want to really make your career, think that way, think strategically. Where do you want to focus on? Because there are umpteen number of opportunities coming now. Okay, take sustainability. We have not talked about it. Lot of products are still not made in India. We import components, right? So how do you learn import from, let's say, European markets, where there are a lot of regulations? Every country has got different regulations. So, one of the role I will later talk about is a government liaison officer. A lot of companies have government liaison, smart guys. We used to call them in Tata Steel as resident managers. So every big city will have a resident manager. Their job is simple: liaison with the ministries. Go and talk to the commerce ministry, go and talk to the finance ministry and find out what's happening, what new policies are coming, how will it impact our business. Even that's a role that MBAs are playing now. So understanding global supply chain is really important, because a lot of global players, sorry, did somebody want to ask a question? No? Okay. So a lot of global companies are coming. It's important to understand geopolitical risk, like our friend explained, competition, obviously how do you adopt new technology and innovation. Okay, we talk about value chain versus supply chain. There's a bit of element of innovation that I brought in the value chain. Where you think about innovation, you also think about a bit more on quality. Apple's value chain. How many of you are familiar with this? Apple's value chain. What is Apple doing right now? How is their strategy changed in terms of manufacturing product? They are now in India. Can we give the mic? What are they doing in India? What are they doing in India?
So basically, they are setting a new hub in India because of China 2020 effects of COVID. So now China, Apple also take a defame from China that the phone is from made in China, which brand image is getting impacted. So they are shifting from China to India for the manufacturing, and they will get a good remark as well.
Okay, good. So this is another important element. China plus one strategy is now coming in, right? So not only Apple, but a lot of manufacturing companies who set up their big manufacturing things in China in 70s and 80s. US almost has 70-80% of their manufacturing happening in China. And because of that, obviously he said that made in China tag is put on the product. Now, that wasn't bad until pandemic hit, because of all the political thing that happened. That so-called name of China isn't so great name in the business world. People look at them a bit more in a suspicious manner, and therefore, obviously, the other element is the global competition between US and China. That's also growing. So obviously now US is thinking of de-risking themselves. And as part of de-risking, they are looking for another country. It need not be only India. Don't be surprised if Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, they're all taking away a lot of our business, so-called our own business, because it's not coming directly to India only, it's going to those countries. Therefore, how can India be in that plus one strategy is important, and how much capability we bring on the table. So a Tata Group saying, I will manufacture for Apple is a great stuff, because Apple believed on the Tata Group and they made huge investments. And the good news is Apple is now exporting of products being made in India. So that's a very big news. So if you look at their normal supply chain, they source components from all of those places. This box called other Asian countries is what is going to grow. where India is going to occupy some space, and the box called China will slowly start getting reducing. In fact, the box called United States is also increasing because some of the strategic areas US have decided to make investment in manufacturing once again, especially if the manufacturing is non-polluting manufacturing. For example, chemical, they may not set up a new chemical plant, but if they have to manufacture something on automobile which is non-polluting, or defense which is non-polluting, or aerospace which is non-polluting, and that's where you see Boeing, they don't outsource too much. They do all of their work in US. So you will see in this box, the United States box slightly increasing in size, China reducing significantly, the other Asian countries also kind of increasing, and Europe also marginally reducing. So this box, the third box, is where we have the opportunity. Okay, that's why I wanted to show you this. Now, once that happens, this word called assembly in China will then change to assembly in India, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and all that stuff. And then it goes via global warehousing and then get distributed across various distribution channels. So that's the normal process that Apple kind of uses. We briefly touched upon supply chain disruptions. One example was given, this political challenge. There are things like cyber attack. How many of you heard of cyber attack on this company called Merck's? They are supposedly the world's one of the largest warehousing and distribution company. And frankly, they didn't even know. So their technology was so poor that they didn't even know that they had a cyber attack. And only when their customers got impacted, the customers complained that products are not coming, that they started looking at. So a lot of these big players are now investing, in supply chain. Now, even simple things like a supplier bankruptcy. You are dependent on a Chinese supplier, or let's say a Thailand-based supplier, and he goes bankrupt. So it's not only about just buying things from a supplier, but actually managing and monitoring your tier 1, tier 2 suppliers. So therefore, supply chain management also has this element of third-party risk management that you need to look at. Pricing volatility of raw materials is a very big issue, especially for those companies which have got their raw material cost as high as 30 to 40% of the overall cost. Because global supply chain, like for example, when the Chinese demand increases, typically you will see the metal prices going up. So if metal is input to your product, your cost will go up. If you suddenly see Chinese chemical demand has come down because the economy is not doing well, you will find chemical prices coming down. So our chemical companies may suffer because they will not be able to export at the same price which they were exporting. So again, looking at this price of the raw material is equally important. So you have to understand some of this stuff: transportation delays, energy pricing hikes, labor shortage, some big strike happening. Look at the transportation. There was a strike going to be called few days back. What was that? Truck drivers strike. It went on only for few hours. And people like me who have had example of suffering during such, I actually heard this news around 8 o'clock in the night. 9:15 I was at the petrol pump filling up my Innova, full tank. And 10 o'clock the strike was over. Yeah, so because it's an election year in India, the government cannot afford strikes. So they will do very quick actions when this happens. But you have to be alert of this, because these are the disruptions or risks that you have to think about. And believe me, nobody else will think. As a supply chain manager, you need to think. So it looks a very easy job, right? Very, very easy job. So many things to do, so many things to worry about. It's a big job. Okay, so supply chain is really a big responsibility from that perspective. Obviously, there are other things important. Wherever there is a process involved, quality involved, you need to understand process optimization, business process re-engineering, understanding lean principles, Six Sigma principles. How do you make sure that you use these quality principles to improve your processes? That's equally important. Now let's come to what are typical jobs. I've got 10-11 minutes to go. What are the jobs? I'll give you a list of jobs. So therefore, you will see that we talked about right from a company which is producing goods and services, jobs in raw material, jobs in planning, jobs in actual manufacturing, jobs in supply chain delivery, import, export, you know, all kinds of jobs are actually going to be available. Global jobs we talked about. We talked about jobs which are going to be very specific, like, you know, quality related jobs and things like that. So there are a variety of jobs. So here are some of the jobs that you can actually apply for in various different kind of companies, depending on what's your interest. Have a look and ask me questions. CRM specialist, yeah, we'll come to that. Okay, so let's start with some kind of a flow, right? What should be the first element in this whole 6 box? What should be the first box we should talk about as a starting box? Planning and forecasting, right? So that's the first important thing. How would you plan? How would you really plan for, so your marketing guy has given you customers requirement, how will you plan of delivering those products? So here are the roles, you know, things like demand planner, production planner, inventory manager. Oh, inventory manager got repeated. So important that we put it twice. Okay, so this is very, very important, and I have partly worked in one of such departments in Tata Steel. We used to have, so when you operate in a plant environment, what happens is you have the plant and you have the marketing guys. So marketing guys used to sit in Calcutta, okay, and the plant was in Jamshedpur. So how will you coordinate between them? So Tata Steel set up an intermediary team, customer operations and productivity management team, okay, and their job was to talk to the marketing guys, take all the marketing plans, talk to the plant guys, take all the plant plans, map them together, get the senior people from both the teams together, and then talk through that plan. And they will hold the plan, because they can make both marketing accountable and plant accountable, but they will be the neutral third party, and that's how they will manage the plan. Because we are talking about millions and millions of steel products being sold, you know, hundreds of product items being sold. So this is one strategy that you can have. So that, you know, in that team you will have these kind of roles: demand planner, inventory manager. You know, you'll need somebody who can understand the marketing plans better, somebody who can understand the production plan better, and somebody who can really integrate the two plans and overlap and see where is the mismatch. You know, is marketing asking for something different? Is plant able to produce something else? How do you then negotiate to say, can we change the production plan? How can we change? Because production plan change actually costs money. You can't change the production line just like this, because you'll have to change some machinery, some equipment, people, and things like that. So there's a lot of thought process and planning that needs to go. So a lot of planning skills are required when you want to do this role. And obviously this role is more of an office-based, air-conditioned office-based job. If you want to do a job like that, then you can focus on planning and forecasting. Okay, what's the next one? Procurement and sourcing. Who said that? Procurement and sourcing. Somebody said it here. Okay, I see a few hands here. Yeah, so procurement and sourcing. So we talked about all the raw material contents, right? Import of raw materials. You know, so you will have purchase or a procurement manager. You will have category manager. Sometimes the import products are so much high, or you know, the raw material is, the numbers are so much high that they make category, you know, different kind of category. So you may need to have a category manager. Then there are sourcing specialist. What's a sourcing specialist? So sorry. Yeah, so these people are like specialists in, you want to source iron ore. I'm a specialist in iron ore. I can tell you all the 20 mines in India, who is producing how much, who's got excess capacity available. That's the specialist. So you will have so much of specialism that you will actually know that level of detail, that you will say, sir, actually, KCIL has produced 5 million tons, 3.5 they have shipped, 1.5 is sitting in there, this thing, we can go and negotiate with them. That's what a specialist is all about. So you will know that level of detail to be able to kind of give information. So that's called sourcing specialist. Then import export specialist, we talked about that. This is a very big area to specialize on. Very, very big opportunity area, because India is going to be a big hub, believe me. They are building this airport in Noida, which is going to be a huge hub for distribution. Big opportunities are going to come. So build understanding and capability on export and import areas. It could be knowing government policies on import and export, knowing global best practices, trying to learn how these companies, what strategy do they adopt, and those kind of stuff. Okay, so from planning to forecasting, we went to procurement. From there, what's the next? Operations and project management. We'll come to data, because data will be everywhere. So operations and project management, we talked about all of this, right? You understand these roles better? From here we will go to logistic and warehousing. Again, we talked about these roles. I specifically said government liaison officer. It's a very important role that has got created. Normally they put mid-level people who understand their business well, they understand the government policies well, they are able to coordinate and things like that. From there you go to her question, customer relationship management. Now imagine, it is no longer just what we call as call centers. It is about making sure that all these elements of supply chain are spoken to. Remember, I talked about, can you call your driver and help him? So it's no longer only calling your customers. So CRM actually has become a very, very important role in most of the organizations which are complex organizations, because CRM people have to understand and really face the brunt of the real customer. Because imagine you call a customer and we shout at them, right? So how can you really handle your customer well is what we are talking about here, And you talked about, you asked a question about CRM specialist, right? And again, depending on the nature of product and services, you will have CRM specialist. If they say, if you're dealing with, it's not that, somewhere our call centers have built a not so good image. But if you really talk to specialist companies, let's say if you're an insurance expert, if I call you, you should be able to solve my problem. It's not merely about saying buy my product. You should be able to say, okay, sir, what's your requirement? Okay, what all do you have? Where is the gap? What can we fulfill? And if you say, okay, I don't have a product to fulfill, but maybe you can check some other company to fulfill your requirements. Even saying that is important. So CRM is becoming important, and at the end, data and analytics. Because believe me, all of this will be, the glue is data and analytics. Everywhere you will need data to make decisions. First to analyze, to understand where is the problem, why is this a problem, what can I do about it. So data is going to be the biggest requirement. And I just taken some examples of top company in the field where you can actually look at. So you may have some big e-commerce, let's say automobile companies like the Mahindra Group, Amazon, Flipkart, Reliance. You will have the IT consulting companies. You will have some of the other manufacturing organizations. All of these need supply chain operations people. So how many of you want to take operations supply chain? Okay, good. Others can go. I'll just talk to these people, okay? Any questions you have which I have not answered, or you want something specific to be answered? Have you got clarity around supply chain? So ask questions. Go ahead. Can we have the mic for him, please? I'll come to you. Let's give him the mic.
Sir, if I am a software
Let's listen to him, please.
I have completed BTech in computer engineering, but I am keen about manufacturing units. I want to make career after PGDM in manufacturing. So is it possible for me to go there?
Well, brave man. Have a seat. Let's give a round of applause. He says he is an engineering, computer science engineer, wants to make a career in manufacturing. You know, you will have to really scout for companies which are large companies and who are investing a lot of money in IT. And I know all these big groups are investing. So, you can target any of these big companies. Yes, you can. Because what happens is IT in these companies are no longer simply software programming. So the role that somebody like you can do is really understand about the big IT requirements of these companies. And IT would typically mean, what kind of, let's say, ERP solutions do they need? What is the business process do they have? Where do you need to automate those processes? What tools already exist? What does not exist? Which vendors can I go and talk to? So a lot of these big strategic IT decisions, actually a lot of people take, who have got knowledge in IT plus manufacturing, because you need to understand the manufacturing process before you actually advise anything to do with IT. So your target could be the bigger groups, the Tata Group, Mahindra Group, Birla Group, some of those groups you can target. Yeah, somebody else had a question? Yeah, question on this side.
Jain sir. So basically I wanted to do the HRM. But now totally I'm shifted towards the supply chain. But as well, I didn't want to lose that touch of HR. So what would be the best work area for me to do that in supply chain only?
See, don't just change because we spoke of so many things. Focus on what you really want to do. But yeah, have a seat, and let me try and answer that question. See, HR. Let's compare between HR and supply chain. If you want to have a future career in HR is one where you want to go. It's always better to start at the starting of HR, okay, and then grow. Remember, we talked about multiple functions, and then you can grow to become a HR business partner and become a CHRO. So that's one line kind of to take. But the good news is, a lot of companies are bringing their functional heads into HR, which means that you may join supply chain, you may join operations, maybe 5 years, 10 years down the line, you may get actually an opportunity to go at the middle level of HR straight away. Jump the queue and become a HR manager somewhere. A lot of companies are doing that. And why are they doing that? They are finding that the HR folks are not able to develop understanding of the business. So many cases we feel that HR has specialization, but you can develop those specialization. But developing understanding of the business is a bigger challenge and requirement. So if you are talking about HR of a company and you don't understand the business of the company, you won't be able to advise appropriately. So understanding the business, and if you work in operations, the good news is you will learn the business very well. You remember we talked about so much, so you can actually learn so much about the business of the company. Therefore, the chances are your ability to branch out and do different things is much higher in supply chain as compared to HR. So you can start anywhere. Yeah, please. Let me give him this. Jai Hind.
Hello. Jai Hind, sir. So, sir, my name is Siddharth Dixit. So, sir, I have a question that in the world of supply chain management, so there is a lack of promotion and development as an individual, because I think that we have to do same work for a long tenure, sir. So, sir, is it myth or reality?
Yeah, okay. So his question, I hope others were able to understand. There's a lot of repetitive work that we need to do when we join functions like this, and which is partly a reality, but that's changing, I would say. Why I'm saying partly a reality is because there are people who joined in purchase and they just grew in purchase, okay, and they became from a purchase executive, they've now become a purchase head. So that's one line you can take, but a lot depends on you, because nowadays most companies have this job change policy. Every 18 to 24 months you will have an opportunity to change your jobs, apply and look for other jobs. So once you get a job in a particular company, believe me, most of the responsibility of your future lies in your hand. how much aware you are about what you are doing, what are the opportunities open in your company or outside the company, is for you to figure out and do it. If you feel very comfortable, there are people who said, oh, I've joined the Reliance group, I'm so comfortable, I'll spend my 30 years in Reliance. That's fine. But if you think, oh, I've learned 5 years in Reliance so much, I can go to a mid-scale company and do a much bigger role, then you can go there. So again, it's totally up to you. This repetitive thing can be changed now big time, because earlier even job changing wasn't that easy. Now job changing, as you all know, is very, very easy, because of the technology and automation involved and all those kind of stuff. So repetitive task and continuing in that is your choice. Okay, it need not be, because there are so many options available nowadays. Even going from one company to the other actually provides you a lot of variety, because you start understanding the other company strategy, the other company approach, which could be very different to where you are working just now. Okay,
Thank you, sir.
thank you, thank you. Yeah, somebody there wanted to ask a question. Okay, let's take turn. Who wants to ask question here? Supply chain. Who wants to work in supply chain? Yeah. You have any questions?
Sir, here.
Okay. Yeah, one
Jain
question
sir.
there. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'll come to you.
Sir, after completing supply chain management, so everyone can start from import export specialist, or it will take some experience, then it will be.
Okay, good question. So let me kind of look at this question more holistic. Now, two things I want to tell you. Okay, building your career and earning, you need to differentiate between these two, and you need to balance between these two as well, because it is quite possible that you may get a job or an opportunity to apply for a job where the immediate earning opportunities may be higher, but that may not be a job of a choice. Okay, so please be very clear in your head that operations may not be the highest paying jobs today in the market, and that is why I'm saying build some of these high skills on technology. So couple your operations experience with technology, data analytics, to get the value from the company, because when you bring multiple skills together, then the company will be able to map your role to a much higher role. So normally what happens in company is they have these competency based grading, and when you join as an MBA, you are in a common box. They expect you to do 1 2 3 4, but if you show I can do 5 in this box and 6 in this box and 8 in this box, chances are they can take you to this box very quickly. Okay, so the ability of yours to think about how can I go beyond this box and acquire skills and knowledge in the other box will be important. Okay, so I just want to make sure that you understand this element very clearly. Don't be disappointed that, oh, I went for operations and I'm getting 20% less than this guy who got into IT. Okay, believe me, that will happen. So you have to live with this. So when people come to me and say, I've got 3.5 lakh job in TCS, should I go or should I go to Cognizant with 5 lakh? And my answer is, if your focus is learning, go to TCS. If your focus is earning, go to Cognizant. So that learning versus earning, you have to balance that thought process in your mind. Okay. Now let's come to his point. There are specialized skills that you need to acquire in the space of operations and supply chain. For that, specific certifications, specific experience needs to be built. So one way to enter import export could be that you do a small course in import export management, if you really focus on that, because that can give you an entry level job at management level in import and export. That may not give you straight away 1 or 2 level up, but that will give you entry level job. Maybe in 6 months, 12 months, you can get promoted very fast because you've come with some specialized knowledge. Okay, so it will be true in every area. Let's say somebody wants to be in total quality management in supply chain. You need to learn some skills on total quality management, some certifications, Six Sigma, lean management. Some of these courses you need to learn so that you're able to demonstrate on your CV with examples that I've done a project in lean, I've done a project in import and export management. Take up SIP if you really want to focus on. Target those companies who are currently busy in exports and do your SIP there, because that will help you build your profile as an import and export manager. Yeah, so either certification or doing some projects could help. Answers your question? Yeah.
Jain sir, my name is Gaurav Nevrikar, and I wanted to ask what task do system integrators perform? What are the tasks and what are the skill sets for that?
Okay, system integrators are a bit high-end tasks. You won't get to apply at this moment right now. Normally, system integrating tasks are available in consulting companies. So one of the good example is Accenture. I hope I have put the name there. Yeah, Accenture has this. So Accenture is very special IT consulting company which focuses a lot on integration. So what Accenture does is they recognize that they're not a product company. They also recognize that they may not have so much of services built into them because they're a high-end services company. So what they do is they have this skill of understanding the end-to-end business very well. So this is one requirement of a system integrator. You need to understand the business very well, because guess what? When you know this big picture, then you can say what are the 10 boxes you want to fit in. So what Accenture is good at is understanding this big business. What are the 10 boxes required? They know they have got 5 boxes. They also know which are the other 5 boxes and which companies to go and get those 5 boxes. So your job as a system integrator will be to know this big business, know your own company's capability. Where you don't have capability, how can you pick up from this company, that company, that company, put all this together, but have that integration thought process to manage them better. In fact, let me tell you, good that you asked me this question. I was talking to somebody day before yesterday in Barclays. And Barclays was running some multi-million projects. 3 big companies failed. Wipro, Infosys and another one. Finally, Accenture came and they said, we will do this, but there's only one condition. So the company said, what? So not only the vendors need to work under us, but even the Barclays employee needs to work under us to make this integration successful. Because the integration means somebody at the helm being able to drive the whole process end to end. And actually Barclays gave that responsibility to Accenture and they delivered the project in 12 months. So integration is about this whole end-to-end understanding and the ability to get something delivered in a very program management way, in a very tough way, because all these 10 boxes will start behaving very differently, right? Even in your class, when you do a small group project, imagine everybody wants to be a hero in that group, right? So when you talk about company, there are 10 heroes. How do you make sure that all 10 heroes come together and deliver? This is a really very special capability that very few companies have. Accenture is one of those who have this capability of integration. Okay, any questions? Think, look at your notes. Okay, defense sector. This is a very big sector developing in India called defense sector, and let me spend 2-3 minutes on that. Obviously, you know, the Indian defense forces are 3rd, 4th largest in the world, right? In terms of sheer manpower, we are the 2nd largest manpower deployed force in the world. Now that means a lot of equipment is required. We have our own historical problems of neighbors not being very, well behaved with us, so we need to be kind of behaving with them. So which means that we have to spend a lot of money in defense. In the past, a lot of this money has gone to foreign companies. And the good news is the country is now planning to build those capabilities in-house. So a very big part of our defense requirements are now going to be fulfilled by the Indian companies. And there are some handful of 6 to 8 companies, but they are mostly in the public sector. Now that's one disadvantage you can call it, because they will take some time to behave like a private company, open up the job market, and things like that. So for a PSU company, let's say if I take Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, or I take Bharat Electronics, or if I take, one of the shipping companies, you will have to go through their advertisement approach. They will advertise their jobs, and you have to apply to those jobs. But the other good news is government also recognizes that only these PSU companies cannot fulfill the requirements. So it has now allowed selected private sector companies to come into defense. So big players like L&T now has a division in defense. You can apply to L&T defense. Some of the Pune based companies, the Bharat Forge group called Bharat Forge Defense, they are now into defense product. There's another private company called Paras Defense, which is now into that. There are a lot of other companies which have come up. So opportunities are now open, and these are very big opportunities, because if you look at the order book of defense companies, they actually have next 5 or 7 years orders already with them. So if they can produce 10,000 crore worth of business, they have 1 lakh crores of order already with them, which means next 10 years, even if they don't do anything, they can do work. It's a good place to go and work. But you have to find out ways to apply to these companies and get them. So some of these private companies, people who are in the placement committee, you should very actively pursue. And we are anyway defense institute, right? So we should focus on talking to them and saying, please come over, come and visit us. Target all the defense companies, because a lot of operations and supply chain work you will get in defense companies, including ISROs and all that. Yeah, so that's a good area to kind of focus on. Any other question? Yeah. I'm glad you asked this question. Thank you. So we've got Bharti Airtel here, and telecommunication. Telecommunication is a very big opportunity in operations, because again, look at the companies where you go and buy your SIM card, and after that what happens? The whole back-end infrastructure is massive for telecom companies, right from their data centers to their hubs and to all the work that they need to do to actually service the customer is a classical example of operations management. So typically in these roles, where will you get a lot of jobs in Bharti? So if I can go back. Can I go back? Yeah. So if you look at this, obviously you will get a lot of works in customer relationship management. Okay, but you'll also get a lot of jobs in planning and forecasting. You'll get jobs in data and analytics, because a lot of work for them is about telecom technology, billing technology, serving the customer, and data analytics, because actually the companies which have the biggest amount of data with them is telecom companies, right? Everybody is dependent on telecom today, from banks data to all other companies data. They are the one who hold the data. They are the custodians of the data. So obviously, depending on the regulatory requirement, they can use some data, they cannot use some data, but data analytics is a very big opportunity, and that's why you see telecom companies launching payment banks, because all our numbers are already with them, and they are the one who control some of the things we do through our numbers. So telecom is a big example of operations kind of a role. Okay, any other company on this list? So we had 30 minutes for Q&A separate. I think we already spent about 18 minutes. So ask more questions. How many of you want to do your summer project in operations? That will be important. If you want to really make a career, then think about from now only. Because see, I'll tell you something. I'll be very frank and open with you. I've been talking to a lot of colleges. The placement this season has not been good. Okay, and that puts a lot of onus on you guys to work very hard, because the placement has been, even in good institutes in Pune, it has been 30, 35, 40%. Normally up to December, many institutes used to get 60%. I don't know what is the state here, but general trend is not so great. So I think a lot of extra effort is required. So, two things I will suggest you guys do. One, start thinking about your SIP companies now. Obviously, your institute will help, but you yourself research and think about, So imagine, and I was giving somebody this example, the situation is not so good that even one of the IIMs have come to us to ask for SIP. And we are not a very big company, only 300 member company, but even IIM has come to say, we mentor, can you give us a SIP? So this year is going to be tough. So please make sure that you start thinking from now itself. What kind of companies you want to target? How will you target? When companies come in the campus, how will you make sure that you definitely land into an SIP properly? That's a very important thing you need to do in the second semester. Okay, so don't have a very focused approach on getting a good quality SIP. Okay, any other question? Can we give mic to him? You okay? Guys, 1 second. Okay, that's a very good question. So, what is your past experience in marketing? See, marketing guys can always switch to supply chain. Remember, I talked about marketing and this common hub, called customer relationship management. Actually, marketing guys have got more opportunities to shift. So, marketing and supply chain kind of flip-flop between them. A lot of overlap is there, so you can do that. But the mindset has to be slightly different, because an operations mindset is different, a marketing mindset is very different. So you'll have to demonstrate that mindset when you're applying to that company.
Because sir, I have already 1 year of experience in operation.
Which company?
Sir, Vasu Healthcare in Baroda.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's discuss this. What's the mindset difference between marketing and operations? Whatever we heard today. What's the marketing mindset? And again, marketing experts here. What's the marketing mindset? Sales. So marketing mindset is sales. What else? Customer. I don't know satisfaction, but customer, right? How do I acquire customer? That's the mindset of marketing and sales guy. What else is us? What's making profit? Okay. Again, I'll convert that to say making margin. So I will sell that product which has got the maximum margin, because marketing guys typically have incentives. And incentives are based on how much top line you generate and how much margin you earn. So 3 things we heard: customer, sales, margin. What else is marketing thought process? Negotiation. So how do I negotiate to get my products sold to a B2B customer or to a retailer who is selling to a B2C and things? What else? Convincing. We talk about negotiation. I'm kind of counting in that. Negotiation and assertiveness kind of. What else? Creating demand. How will you create demand? Preference of the customer. Maybe something like advertising, brand building, positioning of your product. Pull strategy. Okay, so maybe linked with that. Okay, let's talk about operations. What is the operations mindset? Quality control. What is the biggest one in operations? Meet the requirement on time. Get the product to reach to your customer, because unless the product reaches your customer, you get nothing, right? So get the product reach to your customer. Number 1. What else? Quality, he said. Obviously quality, timelines is important. What else is important? Cost. Cost is a very important element in operations. So all the time you would think about cost. My cost of procurement, my cost of production, my cost of supply chain, overall cost. What else? Raw material management. Maybe expand that to say inventory management, whether my input inventory or my output inventory. So one of the problems of supply chain or operations is either your stock is filled with raw material, you don't have space, or you're not able to sell. So your outbound store is totally full, you're not able to take it out. So that's number 4. What else? So good supplier. So a lot of dependence on your small partners, How do you partner them to deliver? It's very important in today. So you need to build an ecosystem kind of common players. So think about this. Now let's come to his question. Two different mindset. See, it's a big switch. Though it's an easy switch, but it's a big switch from sales, margin to product, cost, quality, timeline. So if you can manage that in your mind, you can switch jobs. So that's why I tell you, switching job is not simply switching job. You need to tell in your mind and say, what is the 5 best thing I get in this job? What is the 5 best thing I'll get in this job? How do I compare this 5 versus 5? And only when this 5 overweighs and this kind of goes down, you should switch. And this is what I call as opportunity cost. So your opportunity cost of switching should be much more than your actual cost of switching. If you spend X in switching, your opportunity cost will be 4X, 5X. Only then it makes sense to switch. Otherwise, there's no point switching. Yeah, get the point? Okay, anybody else? Okay, thank you so much. I think it's been great today. I really appreciate your time, and please feel free. Some of you have connected with me. Please feel free to connect. I will keep coming here, and a lot of the other mentors also will keep coming here. So please take advantage of meeting the mentors, talking to them, asking your questions, so that you can ultimately, the whole focus is how do we help you land up in a proper SIP, in a proper job. Okay, that's the whole thing. So thank you very much, and have a good day, everyone.
We extend our sincere gratitude to you, sir, for conducting this remarkable and enlightened session. It is certain that the students have gained abundance of knowledge from the experience you generously shared. Thank you once again for your invaluable insights, and we look forward to your next visit to our campus.